Hello, right, welcome to this video. So I was going to do a video on my updated live rig, which is now all contained in this box. Those of you who are kind of like regular viewers on my channel may have seen a video I did back in June time. There's a playlist on the channel about kind of how I play live. I think I did like a 3 or 4 part video on my live rig at that stage, which is where I was sort of trying to get it down to something as compact and as portable as possible, which I kind of pretty much did at that stage. But since I brought a new piece of gear, which I'll talk about in a second, I've made it even more compact and portable. So my last rig kind of combined it was like a 2-tier DJ controller, like laptop DJ controller stand. I had like I think I had iPad at the bottom, then Electribe, and then this case at the top with the TB03 and the mixer and the launch control MIDI controller, and I was also using another MIDI controller. And kind of like the center of that was the Novation Launchpad app, and then that was sending out MIDI sync to everything else from the app. That was good. That worked well. Took a fair while to set up at a gig. Not a massive amount of time, but took a fair bit of time. So yeah, I mean, I was happy with that. But then earlier this year, I bought the Synthstrom Deluge, which has made life like so much easier for playing live and in the studio. So from a live point of view now, all I take with me is this case. This is basically a guitar pedal board made by Stag. I think it cost me about 30 quid. So if I'm going to a gig now, I take this, and then I've got a backpack with a few spare cables in and some headphones if I need those. And I'll take a power supply, a bank of 5 or 6 plugs as well, just in case I need that if the venue doesn't provide that. And that basically is it. So in terms of ease of setup, we get to a gig, we take this, we take the lid off, and if I can get the flipping thing off, that's the hardest bit. Get that out of the way. I say sorry if the sound isn't brilliant on this. I'm just doing this on the phone for ease of recording and speed. So everything's pretty much already connected up. So all I would do when I get to the gig is the TB03 will come over this side. You can just about see everything in there. And then really it's just a case of plugging in the power. So I've got a couple of plugs to go in. And I'm going to just put these in just over here. In fact, I'm not going to plug that one in for now because I can run this off batteries, because the Deluge will run off batteries just to save me messing up my lovely cabling down here. But that would normally go in. The mixer will go in. Okay, so that's now powered up the mixer. And the TB03 would also will go in to just a USB plug thing. From this cable here. For now, just for ease of doing this, I'm going to put this into the MX1 because I'm going to take the power from there. I can't get the flipping thing in. There we go. Okay, and that's basically it. That's all I would need to do when I get to a gig. That got everything powered up. All I would then do is take the 2 main outs from the mixer. That will go to the PA or the DI box or whatever. Load my song in on here. So for example, the first song I would do on my set is, I think I start on number 14. Load that in, press play, and we should have sound. Sorry, that's really bright. I'm going to turn that off for a minute. I was going to try and get a bit of better lighting in here so these lights aren't too bright. There you go. It's still a bit bright over there, but anyway, not to worry. So yeah, setup time, probably like a minute max, just to get everything set up. Just talk a little bit about how everything is connected, because all the audio connections are basically all there. So I'm just taking the left mono output of the Deluge, this little, actually a patch cable thing here, going into channel 1 on this mixer, taking the audio output from the TB03, which is going into here, onto channel 2, and that's all I'm using at the moment, just those 2 channels. I've got a headphone connection in there if I need to kind of monitor my own sound through the headphones. And then, yeah, basically, so the gear I'm using live is the Deluge, made by Synthstrom. We've got this Behringer mixer, which has got a few built-in effects, which is quite nice, works really well. And then the TB03. So I'll give you a quick demo then of how I would actually play live. So I was going to connect the audio up, and we'll just go into the MX1, so just give me a sec for doing that. Okay, so for connecting up for the moment, I'm just going to go out the 2-track out. Normally if I'm playing live I'd go out the main out, but it's just for ease of putting that into the MX1. I'm going to stick that in there because I'm going to go into channel 5 and 6, is it? On the MX1, so imagine this is going out to your PA. I've loaded in song 14, so when I now press play, okay, that's the start of my set. So you can see how quick and easy it is to set up. I've always wanted to get away from performing with a laptop. I've tried various different ways of performing, and I have done it with a laptop in the past, but it just worries me too much with a laptop because they just decide to restart halfway through a gig and do like a Windows update. I mean, Macs probably aren't as bad, but I mean, I've always been a Windows guy. Sorry, Mac people, but there you go. Yeah, and then you've got like 2 hours wait while you do a Windows update, and it just takes forever to come on. Loading up Ableton Live takes forever, then you've got to load your live set in, particularly if it's a big set, and takes forever. I just want something that I can just turn up with and play and not have to worry about it crashing halfway through. And I can just enjoy performing and getting on with the music and putting more into the performance rather than having that extra worry. The iPad was fairly stable, but again, apps will just sometimes shut themselves down for no reason, and when you're relying on an app to be the centerpiece of your live set, and then it stops halfway through, it's very awkward. So this thing just doesn't crash. So what I'll try and do is I'll talk through a little bit about how I'm now using the Deluge for playing live. Now we've got some sound out of it, and I'll just change the camera angle, and I'll zoom in a little bit more on the Deluge so you can see what's happening there. Okay, so we're zoomed in now on the Deluge. Just in terms of other connections, I just thought I'd mention, because obviously I've gone through the audio connections. Just a simple MIDI connection. I'm just taking the MIDI out from the Deluge, which is here, which you can't quite see. Let's just angle it up a little bit so you can see everything. There we go. Get that straight. There we go. Yeah, normal 5-pin MIDI out, and let's just go into the MIDI in of the TB03. Now the great thing with the Deluge, I mean, this has basically revolutionised how I play live and also in the studio, because this is the centre of everything. This is the brain of the whole system, both live and in the studio, because you can control up to 16 pieces of external MIDI gear with this. So at the moment, I'm just using my TB03 is on MIDI channel 3, so I'm just using MIDI channel 3 when I'm sequencing that. But obviously, if I want to extend my live setup and take, I don't know, like the microbrute or the mini log out and sequence that from here and play a few bits live, that's simple to do. I just take, because the TB03's got MIDI through, so I just take another MIDI cable out of that and stick it into that other piece of gear. So I can make it as big or as small as I want, depending on what I'm playing, where I'm playing, and how long I am playing for. So yeah, I mentioned a second ago about sequencing the TB03 from here. I prefer to do that, all the sequencing from here, rather than from the internal sequencer of the TB03, just purely because everything's contained in here, and I don't need to worry about changing the sequence patterns on the TB03 and remembering that as well as remembering all of this. So that's why I sequence from here, and it works really well. You can still get accents and slides from here. I might do a different video on that if people want to know how to do that. So it works pretty much the same. So in terms of kind of this basic setup, the only thing I'm kind of actually performing live, I suppose, is just changing the dials on the TB03 just to manipulate the sound of the acid lines. There are some tracks that I've not quite got prepared yet for live, but I will be playing some stuff off here, because this has got the synth kind of keyboard thing that you can play on here as well. And eventually I'll probably take one of the synths out with me as well and play some stuff like that live also. But how we've got it at the moment is, so this is the first track in my set. And this is, if you use Ableton Live, it looks very similar to Push. It's kind of like sort of scenes and so on. So we're in song mode at the moment. I'm not going to go into a massive tutorial on how to use the Deluge because that would just take like hours. There is a series of videos on my channel about the Deluge if you want to know all about how it works. Basically, this is a 2-oscillator synthesizer. It's a sample player with time stretch abilities. It's a step sequencer. It's a DAW in a box. You can arrange songs and do everything on it. So in terms of how I'm using it to play live, I'm using a combination of samples that I've taken from my original productions. Well, I say samples. Well, yeah, there are some samples. There are also some loops. So that might be a 1-bar loop, 2-bar loop, a 4-bar loop that I've just exported from Ableton Live and put into here from my original productions. I'm then using some of the internal sounds from here, particularly the drums, the drum kits, because there's a really nice 808 and 909 kit in here. Some of the internal synth sounds, and then also sequencing the TB03 and any other external hardware I might wish to take with me. So yeah, this is basically doing everything. It's playing back samples, it's sequencing external stuff, it's a drum machine, and it's also a synthesizer. So for example, this top line here, if I just go into, this is the track view now. For that, this is the TB03 part for this track. So if I'll just solo that. So basically you can kind of mute or arm your tracks down here. So if it's green and I press play, it will play that track, and then you can launch these as you're playing. Now what you'll notice is if I press play on that one, okay, it will flash. Again, in a very similar way as launching clips in Ableton Live, it will wait till the next bar, the next beat one, and we'll start playing from that, dependent on how long this loop is. So if this loop was like 4 bars long, this sequence, it would wait until the end of the longest sequence before it then starts the next track playing. So you just got to be aware of how long your loops are from that point of view. But I think most of these are pretty much a bar or 2 bars long. So let's just play the TB03 part, and then if I just angle the camera round and up, yeah, okay, so you can see me. Oh dear, that would be lovely to watch. Okay, so okay, so I can obviously just manipulate the sound then of the TB03 whilst playing live. So this is going into channel 2, so we've got effect control on here, so we can turn that off so it's completely dry. I've got like a delay reverby thing on here, and we can, okay, so we can apply effects to that as we so desire. Let's get this angled up again where we were before, about there, that's fine. So that's how I'm using it with the TB03. And I'll usually try and colour code these so I know which is which. So blue is generally my TB03, orange is generally my drums, yellow is usually if it's like a bass, and then others are a little bit random. But it's just down to the more you do it, I just know instantly which track is which because I've done it loads of times. So the second track here is the drum part, which is the internal sounds from the Deluge. I think it's the 808 kit if I remember rightly. And we've got the same kind of thing down here, so we can kind of mute and unmute parts of the drums down here. So if I get rid of the kick, and then we can scroll up, I've got a few more bits up here. Okay, so standard kind of step sequencer on that part. You know, we've got a grid of basically 16 pads, so you can have that as 16th notes, or you can zoom into 8ths and quarters and so on. Next one down is just another drum part. This one's like a little kind of weird effect sound. We've got like another synth sound in there, and then a bass. Bring the drums in. And then we've got a pad down at the bottom. Okay, so all of those sounds on this one actually are all the internal synth from the Deluge, because actually I wrote this track all on the Deluge. I didn't use anything else for this one, so I've got all those programmed in. So this one's got quite a lot of tracks in it, as you'll see, but obviously I can just bring these in and out as I want and make the track as long and as short as is necessary. So what I'm going to do when I finish this video is I'll record a performance of like 4 tracks or so, just so you can see how I can bring all these in, because I did a gig last night and I only had like a 15-minute slot which included setting up time, so I managed to kind of get my performance time to about 11 or 12 minutes, but it was a little bit rushed, so I'm going to I'll like do an extended version of that. So getting from one track to another, obviously I could just, you know, get to the end of the track and stop it wherever I want. Okay, so that might be the end of the track, and I can wait for the rapturous applause, and then just load the next track and then go straight in. But obviously if you've got a short time set, or you want to kind of keep people dancing and keep people moving, I generally would like to do it as a kind of like a continual set of music. Doing the blends between tracks is probably not as smooth as it was on my old setup, because I tended to just jump from one track to another, but that doesn't bother me. I did mess about with having like all my songs on one song arrangement on here, but it just got too big. There were too many things to look at. So, but I mean, it works quite well because all my tracks are, most of them are between like 123 and 127 beats per minute, so you're not noticing a massive jump in tempo, but again, it's not the end of the world. So let's say, for example, I'm going from this track, and I'll probably get it down. I would sort of gradually drop stuff out at the end, and I'll probably get it down just to drums. Then all I've got to do is choose the next track, so let's go to track 16 next. Now when I press load, it will wait until the end of the cycle of this drum loop, whether that's 1 bar, 2 bars, 4 bars or 8 bars, and then it will play this. So again, very similar to launching a new scene in Ableton Live. So if I want it to start, I think this is a 1 bar loop. If I want it to start after the next one, press play now, and then it'll, okay, you can see it will go straight into the next track. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and just show you something else you can do with this. If I go back to that track, now, this is a 1 bar loop. Okay, so if I go in and just press load on track 16, it will wait till the end of that bar and it will finish. Now, for example, let's say I want it to play 4 times before it goes into the next bit. When I press load, what I do is turn the dial up to 4, and then you'll see it will count down. And then it will load in the next track after this one. Okay, and then you can see we're straight into the next track without any gap or anything. So the next track, I'm not going to go through every track because they're all similar, but this one's, that you can see, this is a lot simpler in terms of what I've got on the song view. The top track is the TB03 sequence again. So just turn that up. Okay. And then this one's got a lot more on it, but this is mostly all loops taken from my original track in Ableton. So just got like percussion-y stuff coming in here. And you can actually see what you've got down here. If you want to have a look what the parts are without hearing it, if you press down shift, you can see that's pad, and then that'll tell me that one's bass and various 808 loops and stuff that I've named so I know what each bit is. So we've got a pad, we've got some bass, bit more of a clap, kind of like an effecty sound, open hi-hat. And so on. So again, I can bring stuff in and out. That's basically all the elements of the song. Yeah, that is on that one. So yeah, all the elements of the song on that one. So that one is mostly, I think that one is pretty much all samples on there. This is all just stuff taken from my original production in Ableton Live, although there might be the odd internal drum sound. And that's pretty much how I do it. So my next track will be track 13. So again, we've got internal drums. Again, it's a little bit more complicated. This one, we've got 2 bass line parts here. The sample, that's the internal drum thing. A few more samples and loops, and like another sample thing off there. So yeah, I mean, it works really well. It gives me the flexibility to, I mean, the 4 tracks I've got in this set at the moment, like say last night I played a gig that lasted about 12 minutes. If necessary, I can really build the songs up slowly and break them down slowly, and probably get up to 20-25 minutes for those 4 tracks, which is what I'll try and do when I do the live performance shortly, which I'll try and upload pretty quick after this video as well, so you can see the two together. And yeah, that's basically how I play live now. Very, very simple. I'm not going to go into any great detail on this about how I get the stuff out of Ableton Live. It's pretty straightforward, but what I would do is I would just export a loop. So it might be 1 bar, 2 bar, 4 bars or whatever. So let me find one and give you an example. So this. Okay, so that is a 2 bar loop. So yeah, that was programmed on some drums in Ableton Live. Just export it as a WAV file, and then you just stick it in the folder on the SD card on here and put it in, and you're good to go. So it's only really down to remembering. The only tricky thing is remembering what number is which track. So you might have to have a little list if you've got like a 10 or 11 track set list, or you can just reorder them and put them in order. So you start with track 1 and so on, and just go through them in order. But sometimes you might not necessarily always want to play them in the same order, but you've got the flexibility to do that. And obviously the fact that everything on here is contained on an SD card, which is just in here, you could have different SD cards for different sets. So, you know, if you're playing this set and you want to keep it really simple with nothing else on it, just stick a new SD card in with like a 10-track set, and you're good to go. So it's loads of flexibility. It's an amazing piece of kit, this is. And it's just made my life really, really simple, which is all good. Right, I've jabbered on for long enough on this one. So stay tuned for the live performance, which hopefully will then kind of concrete and cement everything in that I've tried to explain in here. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Usual things, please like and subscribe if you've not already done so. Feel free to share the videos around. If you've got any questions or comments, stick them in the box below, or indeed any suggestions for future videos, and I'll try and accommodate those wherever possible. And if you want to donate to the channel, there's a PayPal link somewhere on the channel, if you're feeling generous, or just go and stream my music on Spotify, buy it on iTunes, Apple Music, or whatever. It all helps. Any little bits help me keep everything going. Okay, thanks again, and I will see you in the next part. Cheers.